Welcome to Very Honored Frater BT's Esoterinerd podcast, episode 105, in which Dr. Robert Strong, PhD, is that redundant, of Gonzo Theology, and I interview successfully Daniel Garber. This episode is called Daniel Garber 4, as it is the fourth episode where Daniel Garber is being directly interviewed, but it is the fifth episode that he's in, as he once co-hosted an episode a while back as well. But first, now I don't know if that was clearly audible, but we were chanting Namu Myōhō Renge Kyō. That is a chant popular in all the forms of Nichiren Buddhism. You might be familiar with chanting Namu Myōhō Renge Kyō. There's a little bit of pronunciation difference, but not a dogmatic difference or difference in meaning between those two. Basically, there was the form of Buddhism established in the 13th century by Nichiren, and he lifted the status of the title of the Japanese title of the Lotus Sutra to the status of being a universal mantra, and hence the chanting of it. In recent forms of that old branch of Buddhism, they are building those world peace pagodas. You might have seen them if you've done a bit of traveling or looking at those sorts of, documentaries, travel documentaries. They're around Nepal and India and a few other places. Basically, they want to bring Buddhism, more Buddhism, to the region that Buddha came from. And then recently, I'll have to do some research to get all the details on this, but the way that I heard it, much more recently, there was a priest within that lineage that kind of rebelled and set up a new formula or new system. That's the one, if you're familiar with the chant, or you've attended a coworker or friend said, "Hey, come to my friend's house, we're doing a chant," and you were like, "Is this a cult?" And they were like, "No, it's not, because of this, and it's superior to going to temple for these reasons." That is a very popular movement in what they call the Western world, but not popular in Japan. That one in particular. In Japan, the older lineage is more respected, so Namu Myōhō Renge Kyō might have a little bit of more of a ring of authenticity to one who looks at things that way. But Namu Myōhō Renge Kyō is more familiar in the West. Anyway, that's my vague smattering of ignorance on the subject, and I'm going far afield. The reason why that is the title of this, well, you might have already figured it out. As I did mention, it was the Japanese title of the Lotus Sutra, but it can literally be translated as either devotion to the mystic law of the Lotus Sutra or glory to the Dharma of the Lotus Sutra. So, as one of, I'm sure, many who've chanted that a lot, of course, naturally, I became interested in reading the Lotus Sutra, so I got this here copy of it. The ratings on Amazon aren't great because of typos, and it doesn't even say who translated it. It just says The Lotus Sutra by Gautama Buddha. That's it. The end. And you open it, and there you go. You just start. Oh, translated by H. Kern in 1884. That's probably why it's got the lower ratings, as it's one of the older translations. There's probably better translations. Well, now that I've undersold this to death, let's get back to our reading, shall we? Oh, if you don't know what I'm talking about. In the previous episode, we started a reading, but we got to the part where they listed all the many, many, many people in attendance at this particular gathering. And then I just stopped reading in the middle of it. So we're going to jump in here a little bit further along. Then did those who were assembled and sitting together in that congregation, monks, nuns, male and female lay devotees, gods, nagas, goblins, Gandharvas, demons, Garudas, Kinnaras, great serpents, men and beings not human, as well as governors of a region, rulers of armies, and rulers of 4 continents, all of them with their followers, gaze on the Lord in astonishment, in amazement, in ecstasy. And at that moment there issued a ray from within the circle of hair between the eyebrows of the Lord. It extended over 1,800,000 Buddha fields in the eastern quarter, so that all those Buddha fields appeared wholly illuminated by its radiance, down to the great hell Aviki, and up to the limit of existence. And the beings in any of the 6 states of existence became visible, all without exception. Likewise, the Lord's Buddhas staying, living, and existing in those Buddha fields became all visible, and the law preached by them could be entirely heard by all beings. And the monks, nuns, lay devotees, male and female, yoginis, yogis, and students of yoga, those who had obtained the fruition of the paths of sanctification, and those who had not, they too became visible. And the bodhisattvas, mahasattvas, in those Buddha fields, who plied in the bodhisattva course with ability, due to their earnest belief in numerous and various lessons and the fundamental ideas, they too became all visible. Likewise, the Lord's Buddha in those Buddha fields, who had reached final nirvana, became visible, all of them. And the stupas made of jewels and containing the relics of the extinct Buddhas became all visible in those Buddha fields. Then rose in the mind of the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Maitreya this thought: "Oh, how great a wonder does the Tathagata display! What may be the cause? What the reason of the Lord producing so great a wonder as this? And such astonishing, prodigious, inconceivable, powerful miracles now appear, although the Lord is absorbed in meditation. Why, let me inquire about this matter. Who would be able here to explain it to me?" He then thought, "Here is Manjushri, the Prince Royal, who has plied his office under former jinas and planted the roots of goodness while worshipping many Buddhas. This Manjushri, the royal prince, must have witnessed before such signs of the former Tathagatas, those arhats, those perfectly enlightened Buddhas of yore. He must have enjoyed the grand conversations on the law. Therefore, I will inquire about this matter with Manjushri, the Prince Royal." And the 4 classes of the audience, monks, nuns, male and female lay devotees, numerous gods, nagas, goblins, Gandharvas, demons, Garudas, Kinnaras, great serpents, men, and beings not human, on seeing the magnificence of this great miracle of the Lord, were struck with astonishment, amazement, curiosity, and thought, "Let us inquire why this magnificent miracle has been produced by the great power of the Lord." At the same moment, at that very same instant, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva Maitreya knew in his mind the thoughts arising in the minds of the 4 classes of hearers, and he spoke to Manjushri, the Prince Royal. "What, O Manjushri, is the cause? What is the reason of this wonderful, prodigious, miraculous shine having been produced by the Lord? Look how these 18,000 Buddha fields appear variegated, extremely beautiful, directed by Tathagatas and superintended by Tathagatas." Then it was that Maitreya, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, addressed Manjushri, the Prince Royal, in the following stanzas. "Why, Manjushri, does this ray darted by the guide of men shine forth from between his brows, this single ray issuing from the circle of hair, and why this abundant rain of mandaravas? The gods, overjoyed, let drop manjushakas and sandal powder, divine, fragrant, and delicious. The earth is, on every side, replete with splendor, and all the 4 classes of the assembly are filled with delight, while the whole field shakes in 6 different ways, frighteningly. And that ray in the eastern quarter illuminates the whole of 18,000 Buddha fields simultaneously, so that those fields appear as gold-colored. The universe, as far as the hell Avicii and the extreme limit of existence, with all beings of those fields living in any of the 6 states of existence, those who are leaving one state to be born in another. Their various and different actions in those states have become visible, whether they are in a happy, unhappy, low, imminent, or intermediate position, all that I see from this place. I see also Buddhas, those lions of kings, revealing and showing the essence of the law, comforting many kotas of creatures, and emanating sweet-sounding voices. They let go forth, each in his own field, a deep, sublime, wonderful voice, while proclaiming the Buddha laws by means of myriad of kotas of illustrated proofs, and to the ignorant creatures who are oppressed with toils and distressed in mind by birth and old age, they announce the bliss of rest, saying, "This is the end of trouble, O monks." And those who are possessed of strength and vigor, and who have acquired merit by virtue or honest belief in the Buddhas, they show the vehicle of the Pratyeka Buddhas by observing this rule of the law. And the other sons of the Sugata, who, striving after superior knowledge, have constantly accomplished their various tasks, them also they admonish to enlightenment. From this place, O Mangu Gosha, I see and hear such things, and thousands of kotas of other particulars besides. I will only describe some of them. I see in many fields bodhisattvas by many thousands of kotas, like sands of the Ganges, who are producing enlightenment according to the different degree of their power. There are some who charitably bestow wealth, gold, silver, gold money, pearls, jewels, conch shells, stones, coral, male and female slaves, horses, and sheep, as well as litters adorned with jewels. They are spending gifts with glad hearts, developing themselves for superior enlightenment in the hope of gaining the vehicle. Thus they think the best and most excellent vehicle in the whole of the threefold world is the Buddha vehicle, magnified by the Sugatas. May I, forsooth, soon gain it after my spending such gifts. Some give carriages yoked with 4 horses and furnished with benches, flowers, banners, and flags. Others give objects made of precious substances. Some again give their children and wives, others their own flesh, or offer, when bidden, their hands and feet, striving to gain supreme enlightenment. Some give their heads, others their eyes, others their dear own body, and after cheerfully bestowing their gifts, they aspire to the knowledge of the Tathagatas. Here and there, O Manjushri, I behold who have abandoned their flourishing kingdoms, harems, and continents, left all their counselors and kinsmen, and betaken themselves to the guides of the world to ask for the most excellent law, for the sake of bliss. They put on reddish-yellow robes and shave hair and beard. I see also many bodhisattvas, like monks, living in the forest, and others inhabiting the empty wilderness, engaged in reciting and reading. And some bodhisattvas I see, who, full of wisdom or constancy, betake themselves to mountain caves, where by cultivating and meditating the Buddha knowledge they arrive at its perception. Others, who have renounced all sensual desires by purifying their own self, have cleared their sphere and obtained the 5 transcendent faculties, live in the wilderness as true sons of the Sugata. Some are standing firm, the feet put together and the hands joined in token of respect toward the leaders, and are praising joyfully the king of the leading jinas in thousands of stanzas. Some thoughtful, meek, and tranquil, who have mastered the niceties of the course of duty, question the highest men about the law, and retain in their memory what they have learnt. And I see here and there some sons of the principal Jina who, after completely developing their own self, are preaching the law to many cotis of living beings with many myriads of illustrations and reasons. Joyfully they proclaim the law, rousing many bodhisattvas. After conquering the evil one with his hosts and vehicles, they strike the drum of the law. I see some sons of the Sugata, humble, calm, and quiet in conduct, living under the command of the Sugatas, and honored by men, goblins, gods, and titans. Others, again, who have retired to woody thickets, are saving the creatures in the hells by emanating radiance from their body, and rouse them to enlightenment. There are some sons of the Jina who dwell in the forest, abiding in vigor, completely renouncing sloth, and actively engaged in walking. It is by energy that they are striving for supreme enlightenment. I could go on, but I think 20 minutes is enough. The episode itself is pretty long, so I figured, why not do a little bit of extra reading? I didn't get to the part that I wanted to get to, but I'll just keep reading this in the intros to the Esoterinerd episodes until I get to what I wanted to get to, and then until I get bored with it. Our guest tonight, Daniel Garber, has had a long and strange trip in life. But recently, and by recently, I mean, the past few years, he has been wholeheartedly 100% delved into the Lakota spiritual path. And I will let him explain beyond that. His path, if I remember correctly, started around 1992, but then it really got going with the Standing Rock protest a few years back. And again, if you haven't heard episode 81, maybe just hit pause right now, go back and listen to that. And then if you have lots of time on your hands and you're interested in this subject, then go ahead and dial it back if you haven't heard already episode 104, Daniel Garber 3. But without further ado, let's move on with episode 105, Daniel Garber 4. That's not confusing at all. And get to that. Did we start with a co-host? I don't remember. Well, let's just get to that interview, shall we? Good morning.
Good evening.
How are you?
Have you had your coffee yet?
I have. I'm on coffee number 2. Here, I'll switch to audio.
Good. You look perky.
Yeah, I'm faking it. Here, wait. Stop the video. There we go. So we don't have our co-host yet, but glad to hear your voice.
Yeah.
How have you been?
So how is it over there in India?
Oh, well, geez. It's right now it's a little warm here in Goa. It'll start raining in about 2 months, and then it won't stop raining for about 4 months. So that'll be fun.
Isn't Goa where they used to have those psychedelic beach parties?
Yeah, they still do. I mean, right now they're sort of on pause. They still do have some parties now and then. I see some clubs and bars lit up, and with some music and stuff like that. So yeah, the tourism is happening. It's just a little bit muted right now. It's all people from Delhi and other parts of India coming on vacation in Goa, or people who are working from home because of COVID. Some of them shift and just stay here while they're working from home.
Yeah. So you like it over there?
Yeah. I mean, I always struggled a little bit with heat, and it never gets cold here. In the winter time at night, it gets down to Oh, that's nice. No, it can get like slightly chilly, but it never gets cold. So that, yeah, I'm tropical climate is definitely new to me. I couldn't resist though, because I love the rain.
Are we on the record right now, or are we
Yeah.
still off?
Yeah, we're
We
on.
are.
It's always something, huh?
So thanks for giving me an opportunity to do the real thing as opposed to the
Sure.
rehearsal.
Oh, yeah. No, that was a fun episode, but it's good to have a clearer connection and not be cutting in and out, you know. And we only really covered a little bit last time, I think.
Yeah, I dragged myself away from the shop. I was actually over at the shop again, working on shamanic horse staffs, and I managed to realize that I needed to get back here in time. So
well, thank you.
I made a point of that.
That's good. Yeah, that horse staff was reminding me. I forget the woman's name. I think it starts with an O, an OE or something. But if you look on YouTube for Siberian Shaman woman, she's the one who pops up, and she does these live performances and becomes a horse at times. Reminded me when you were describing that.
Oh, you should give me the link to that, because I don't know who that is.
Sure, I'll send it
later on.
Yeah. So you're in Washington still?
I'm in Washington State. I'm in a suburb of Seattle called Bremerton. It's where the U.S. Navy shipyards are.
Okay.
And that's why there's so many metalworking experts here, because they're retired people from the shipyard.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
They have lots of like nice equipment, plasma cutters and laser cutters.
Wow.
And little awesome stuff.
Some serious smithing.
Yes.
Piu is my wife. Priel is her formal name. She's fascinated by the Pacific Northwest.
It's nicer than we let on.
Yeah, it is really nice, isn't it? How's the weather right now?
It's very nice, actually. It's in the 60s, upper 60s. It's sunny, unseasonably warm. And the place where I'm about to take off to in South Dakota, the Pine Ridge or Rosebud reservations have been in the high 80s.
That's a
so
difference.
It seems to indicate that there's some kind of climate change going on.
Yeah. So normally, now South Dakota, is it normally hotter or it's normally cooler?
No, it wouldn't be this warm.
Okay.
You know, South Dakota is it's a little bit, it's like Utah.
Okay.
North Dakota is more like Montana in terms of latitude.
Got it. And you're going to North Dakota?
I'm going to South
You're
Dakota.
Going to South Dakota. Yeah. Sorry. Get my Dakotas mixed up. And
but actually North and South Dakota, they're both the Dakotas because they were originally the Lakota land.
Oh.
It's actually owned by the Lakotas, and we stole it from them.
I see. Yeah, that reminds me a little bit of how the Portuguese arrived in Japan, or no, the Portuguese arrived in Korea and asked them, is there anything further east? If we keep going, will we hit anything? And they said, Nippon. And they said, what? Hapon? Well, we'll spell that with a J just to be sure.
That's where that came from.
Yeah. It was like a Korean pronunciation of Nippon.
Hey guys.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, Dr. Robert here. All right. Glad to hear you guys. Sounds like everybody's fully connected around the virtual campfire here.
Yeah.
We are well connected.
My one of my sons went to come say hi. Edward lived with us for a few weeks while he was here, Mr. Daniel. So my son's got used to seeing Edward and joking around with him. I'm going to let him jump on and say hi. Okay.
Okay, sounds good. Hi. How are you?
Good.
That's good.
Tomorrow I'm going to school.
Oh, congratulations. In person or on the
Yep.
screen?
In person.
Wow.
Good for you.
That's great news.
That's the way it should be.
He jumped up. Well, he jumped off the horn. He gave him back to me and went running back in.
So kids are
He
going
just
back
wanted
to
to say
school?
hi. Yeah, their first day going back. Quarantine is LA is kind of a sort of doing a hybrid model. They try to have kids be able to come back and have in-person learning with their friends and stuff, but they're doing it in modules so that there's not as many kids in the room at one time.
Okay.
So they're kind of shuffling them through this sort of like A/B format. You're either afternoon or a morning kid, and it makes me wonder how when we go back to work, all the redundant meetings and all the sitting in traffic, there's so much that we can do without that we can do at home now. So
Yeah.
it makes me wonder how the average 9-to-5 job will be affected as people, kind of all come to that conclusion. We really don't have to do half the stuff that we do really to make this work,
Right.
all the time in traffic, especially being one of them.
Yeah, and needing to be sitting in that particular seat in that building. I mean, on one hand, yeah, they can look at you and make sure you're doing your work or whatever, but I don't know, most of the people are on Facebook anyway and just have their hands on the alt tab ready to make it look like they're working.
That definitely is often the case, but we want to try to pry that sort of digital addiction potential away from them, at least until they're older.
Yeah.
And it really is hard to keep them focused sometimes. Like you're constantly in there, and it's like they know how easy it is just to flip open a YouTube tab, and then all of a sudden you're watching some remix of Pirates of the Caribbean. The crabs that turn into rocks. But anyway, Brother Daniel, where are you at geographically right now? I know you've been en route on quite a journey.
I haven't taken off. Well, I'm sort of circling the airport now, waiting to leave.
Oh.
I'm in a suburb of Seattle called Bremerton. That's where the Bremerton Naval Shipyard is. And that's where I used to live, so I have a lot of contacts here, and that's how I know the metal workers, because as the shipyard metallurgists age and retire, they then become available to do cool shit with metals. So that's what I've been doing here. As I've been hanging out, waiting to leave.
All right. I know the staffs you were describing sound really fascinating.
Yeah, the shamanic staffs. Yeah,
you're taking us with you, right?
No, I was commissioned to make them by a woman who practices Mongolian shamanism, and I have to deliver them to her before I leave.
Oh wow, okay.
But I have some extra sets that I made as long as I was making them. So.
Nice. Now, do you have any pictures of them yet, or are they not to be photographed?
Oh yeah, they're all over Facebook.
Oh, okay. I'll check it out.
Yeah, I can make sure you get some copies of those. They have actual horse hair on them, and so I was making these shamanic horse staffs under the guidance and tutelage of Nicholas Breezewood, who has the empowerments from the Buryat themselves. And so they were made ceremonially, and by adding the horse hair themselves, we've imbued the horse spirit to them. And I could talk a little bit more about how that works with Lakota metaphysics.
Sure, yeah. Mongolian shamanism in Lakota terms.
Yeah, these indigenous people seem to have many similarities about the way they see the world. And I noticed that, you started out by saying we are connected. Exclamation point. Yes, we are.
Yes,
We're connected. The synchronistic thing about that utterance is that in the Lakota way, their main aphorism is in Lakota, Mitakoe Oyasin. And what that means is we are all connected.
Nice.
We are connected to everything. We are connected to the animals. We're connected to the trees. We're connected to the stones. We're connected to all the other people on the planet. That's the main thing about their worldview. That really sums them up. And you said it from the get-go. We are connected. Indeed, we are. And in fact, that's the way they would end any kind of meeting like this. They would say that, and it's when they pray they use that Mitakoe yes thing. It means,
it's almost like a doxology in a liturgy.
Yes, it is. And it's like saying amen.
Okay.
It means my relations. You're addressing your relations. You're addressing your relatives.
Now that is similar to a lot of I know the Korean shaman. I've studied some. One of my partner's ancestors was a shaman in Korea, and they have a similar practice to some of the Japanese shaman and like sort of the early Shinto stuff. And the way that they talk about like elemental spirits and directional spirits, I mean, there definitely is kind of this universal nature religion that seems to have been present, across the Bering Strait and on. I know
Yes.
it was really interesting when I was up in Alaska reading about, the first migrations that came across the Bering Strait when Homo sapiens was just evolving, the first migrations into the hemisphere and then the second and how the cultures kind of shaped as they went down the coast. And have you gotten to know any of the, besides the Lakota there, in the central part of the continent, have you gotten to know any of the native tribes in your area of Seattle and the Pacific Northwest?
I have. I've done ceremony with them.
Tell me what that
they're-
is like.
They're called the Coast Salish.
Okay.
The Coast Salish includes the Haidas and the Duwamish, the Tulalip, Suquamish, all these place names that we have now in the Northwest were based on the old tribal names.
Mhm.
The Coast Salish have active genetic or hereditary shamans. To this day, they're practicing full-on shamanism. And in academic circles, there are some feelings nowadays that in North America, there isn't any real shamanism here. They say that what it is real. It's animistic. It's not shamanistic. It's not real shamanism.
Mhm.
But in fact, the Coastal Salish, everything that they do has all of the qualities and attributes that Siberian or Mongolian or Tibetan shamanism has. And in fact, I would argue that the Lakotas have that as well.
That's interesting. I hadn't considered the difference.
Yeah, there are certain criteria that have to be met for a practice to be shamanic. And one of them is that the spirits have to choose you. Another one is that you are possessed by the spirit and the spirit acts through you to heal people. And another one is that they do spirit travel. They travel into spirit realms. They confront spirits. They talk to spirits. They cajole them. They sometimes fight with them. They convince them to help them heal somebody. Well, all of these things in traditional Asian shamanism, I know for a fact are being done by Coastal Salish and by Lakota people that I know.
Were those two regions of Native Americans knowledgeable of each other? I know that Chaco Canyon in the south, it brought together, there were Creek Indians that would come from like Mississippi and Choctaw, and there were tribes from all over the southern part of the continent that would meet at Chaco Canyon. Did the northern tribes, like from the Pacific Northwest and then the Lakota, the High Plains, did they have any awareness that these other groups existed, I wonder?
Oh, I think there was lots of travel going on.
Mhm.
The Lakotas themselves would oftentimes go on what's called a zuya. A zuya is a road trip or an adventure,
Oh,
uh,
beautiful.
and they would be gone for years sometimes, and they would travel, like vagabonds heading south, down to Mexico, and they came back to their people with things like copal, uh, which is a resin used for incense, and it's one of the sacred herbs that's used by the Lakotas. Well, that doesn't come from the northern plains; it comes from Mexico.
Hmm.
So there has to have been a lot of travel, a lot of trade going on, also between the northwestern tribes and the Central American tribes, I'm sure. And I think the medicine people, when a medicine person meets another medicine person, you just know it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's not. I don't think that there would be much risk of being captured or tortured or killed or whatever if you meet another medicine person. I think medicine people were almost universally respected too.
They probably used a lot of the same symbology and sacred geometry, and some of the rock art, definitely has some similarities. Um, I
Yeah.
started one of the chapters of my journey into getting to know the elemental spirits and nature as a deity was um, I was looking at some petroglyphs with a ranger friend of mine. We'll just call him Ranger Anthony because he's not necessarily supposed to show people these, but he really trusts me. Um, and we were talking about how much of ancient consciousness was taken up by narratives about the stars and the sky, and just thinking about, wow, we just don't really spend time under the sky to like really feel the draw, to feel it pulling on us. And so I he dared me to sleep outside to see if I could do it for a whole month to see if I felt any different. And uh, I ended up doing it for several years, just because it really did feel different. I almost would feel claustrophobic sleeping back inside.
Well, I grew up in Montana. I was born and raised there, and it's called Big Sky Country.
Right.
And
Yeah.
at night, it's just one big dome over you, dotted with stars. And I think all of these old cultures have star lore involved.
Yeah.
The Lakotas have very rich star lore that I've been learning. And one of them is that when we are born and when we come into this world, Spirit gives us, the Great Spirit gives us our own spirit by reaching up and plucking a star, and that star is our spirit. And they give that to us when we're born, and then when we die, our spirit has to go back to the stars again. And the people themselves are supposed to have come from the stars. Some people say they came from the Pleiades. The Lakotas that I've talked to don't mention really the Pleiades. What they talk to is the Big Dipper. They say that's the source.
The bear.
Wow.
But they do call themselves the Star People.
In Alaska, the peoples of Alaska, the Big Dipper was, salient, and of course the North Star is right there. Yeah, that's fascinating. That constellation was a salient to some of these people in this hemisphere as much as maybe Orion and the Dog Star were to maybe some of the Mediterraneans for whatever reason.
The Big Dipper, the bear, that was there was, if I recall correctly, and take this with a grain of salt because it might have been a clickbait that I heard about. But what I heard was that in a Neanderthal site, they found bear skulls arranged exactly like the bear constellation, which is the Big Dipper. So
I'll have
in
to
other
look
words,
that up.
Neanderthals thought of that constellation as the bear constellation. Very interesting.
Yeah.
I like to think of that. How much of our archetypes were formulated by prior hominids?
Right. Yeah. And that's certainly before the Bering Strait.
I always imagine too that
Interest.
there's some type of relationship with nature, maybe some type of sixth sense that inevitably, as we rely more on technology, there's a give and take. We kind of inevitably relinquish this
Some of
other
our
thing that we
natural
had.
ability. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was reminded today actually about this whole Bering Strait situation. You referred to it earlier.
Mm-hmm.
The Lakotas that I know and the indigenous people that I know now don't agree with that. They don't believe in that. They think that they've been here forever and that they've been here a long, long time. And
right.
in fact, they say that there have been fossil findings lately that indicate that there are people that have been on this continent much longer than that supposed
Migration.
travel across the Bering Straits happened. There have been fossil findings that are 30,000 years old here. I think there's DNA evidence that there's somebody out there in South Dakota who has been here much longer than like most people. So they don't subscribe to the Bering Straits theory, and that's what they base their claim to the land on. They say that they were not immigrants. They were here already.
Interesting.
And they actually I said something about they say they come from the stars, but one of their origin myths is that they were underground at first, and then there was a point where there's a whole myth origin story about how they emerged from underground through a place called the Wind Cave. And the Wind Cave is a real cave that's in the Black Hills of South Dakota, which the U.S. government stole from them.
Right.
So that's one of the sacred sites that they don't have ownership of any longer. It's owned by the National Park Service. I went and visited it a year or two ago, and it's really a remarkable place. It's called the Wind Cave because it breathes. If the air outside is warmer than the air inside, the air inside will breathe outward, and vice versa. So that there's this constant kind of flow of air in and out of this cave.
Wow.
But the Hopis say that they came from underground as well.
Oh, that's interesting.
There's always
their kivas, their ceremonial kivas are circular. They're like a sweat lodge, only they're like underground, I think. And the only way you can get into a kiva is through a hole in the ceiling. And that hole in the ceiling is metaphorical for the way that they emerged from underground and came to our world.
You were talking about Mongolian shaman. I know the Siberian shaman had a structure like that.
Yeah, the Santa Claus
was like
myth.
a teepee. Yeah, and when the snow would accumulate, and these are the people that live high in the tundra. When the snow would accumulate, they would just kind of they'd be down there under it, and it's almost like a type of submerged teepee / igloo sort of thing, and you'd come in and out of the chimney on the ladder, and some anthropologists think that could be related to the Santa Claus, and they would often bring the muscaria mushrooms, Amanita muscaria, and of course, if you have nothing else to do during a long winter, eating mushrooms is probably not a bad thing to do.
Well, one of the things that one of the cultures that did that especially were the Sami, and they're like the reindeer herders of Norway, right?
Right.
And I've Facebook can be amazing, the people that you can hook up with. And I was actually talking to a Sami on Facebook, and we were comparing
Oh,
the Lakota ways with Sami ways, and they're very, very similar.
I would like to preserve that
and-
conversation for posterity. That's
And
interesting.
the Sami, you know, they have like teepee structures that they lived in the winter, and they herded their reindeer. The reindeer would eat this Amanita muscaria, and the essential chemicals of the Amanita would get filtered out in the urine of the reindeer, and then they would drink that urine. The shamans, the Sami shamans, would drink the urine of the reindeer and trip on the Amanita muscaria. But so the Sami are very similar to Lakotas, but also the Tibetan people. The Tibetan people feel like they're the mountain brothers of the Lakotas. I know some Tibetans, and that's the way they talk about the Lakotas. You know, it's like the Lakotas are their distant relatives.
There was do you know the term, the treasure finders in Tibet? I forget. In Shimbalaya, I don't know if you're up on all the shenanigans. Shimbalaya is basically the big international Tibetan organization that's popular in Europe and the US, that was founded by Chogyam Trungpa. Very controversial, especially these days. Anyway, that's enough since it's off topic. But there was a treasure finder in that context who said that Padmasambhava said that in 700 years, the red man will learn the ways of his path, and something like that. I have a quote in another episode, and so that was kind of just something to take with a grain of salt, because those treasure finders, it's kind of an interesting thing.
I'm really fascinated in Tibetan Buddhism. I think the thing that fascinates me the most is this concept of the Bayul, the land that is so sacred that you're not allowed to war, you're not even allowed to hunt on certain sacred lands, and just how there being almost a primacy to that. And I could see certainly how that corresponds with the Native American ideal that pretty much the whole world is a Bayul, a sacred land with
that's definitely
that's innately spiritual.
I might interject and say that for the Lakotas, that might be the pipestone quarries in Minnesota. The pipestone is this red catlinite stone that they made their pipes of, and all tribes were allowed to go to the quarry and quarry the sacred pipestone, and they were given free pass. It was like their war and violence was not allowed there.
Right.
Which indicates to you how sacred they feel about the pipe. The pipe is like the most sacred object that they have.
Yeah, the peace pipe, right?
Well, peace is sort of a misnomer given to it by white culture. It's the Lakota word for that is chanupa, and it means sacred pipe. Chanupa wakan means sacred pipe.
Okay.
I never realized how sacred sacred tobacco was until I was helping out at Occupy ICE. There was a big group of people that they had just gotten back from the Dapple pipeline protests, and they lived for a long time, and they would do morning prayers with Lakotas, and they would use tobacco during these ceremonies. And it was interesting, the ones who said they had smoked addictively, they actually were able to kind of get their tobacco use under control just by using it ceremonially, and that was kind of fascinating. But did they have any other entheogens besides tobacco, which is mood altering in large doses for sure? I know
Well,
Jimson weed was what they used on the West Coast with the Indians in California.
yeah. They, I am constantly amazed at the things that I learn, and of course, I'm just a Wasichu, a white man, and I wasn't raised in their culture, so I can't speak for them, but I have learned a lot, and one of the interesting things is that in addition to their reverence for tobacco, they have reverence for what's called the red willow bark. It's called Chanchasa. Chanchasa, it's the inner bark of the red willow. That was the original sacred smoking mixture that was used before tobacco. And tobacco came later. Tobacco is a powerful herb. It has each plant has a different spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you work with those spirits, each one has got a different kind of feel, a different kind of different attributes, different modalities. The tobacco is a powerful spirit, but the original sacred smoking herb is willow, or red willow anyway. And in
Mm-hmm.
fact, one of the things that I've learned in my own practice, I've done ceremony with Blackfeet, and the Blackfoot people use tobacco in their pipes exclusively almost. The Lakotas oftentimes have a mixture in their pipe. They might have tobacco mixed with other herbs, but as I got more immersed into my own community, my own teachers, that was actually one of the things that was on the tip of my tongue. It was like, so what should I use in the pipe? And I actually, I was going to ask my teacher that at the Sundance that I was at, and I had been dancing that for a couple of days, and I was very, very sunburned. And he came up to me and he said, "You look very burnt. Do you want some medicine on it?" And I said, "Sure." And so he brought out this red ochre, and he started painting my whole body with red ochre. And then he locks eyes with me and looks me right in the eye, and he says, "We only put red willow bark in our pipes, nothing else."
Wow. What is it like? What compounds are in it? Do you know? Is it like DMT or?
Well, red, it's not. I don't think it's really psychoactive.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very pleasant smoke. It tastes good, and the willow has analgesic properties, because that's where aspirin comes from.
Okay.
It comes from the willow.
What is that sound? Is that miso?
Well, on my end, I have a rabid Miss Gruffles and a helicopter, a police helicopter.
Oh no!
Competing. I think Miss Gruffles is yelling at the police helicopter. She's like, "Fuck the police!"
That's such an LA thing, is the like helicopters flying around at night
constantly.
Yep. It's becoming more and more frequent, sadly.
I've
Mr.
only heard
Garber,
one helicopter in Goa.
Lucky. Mr. Garber, what are the hot issues that are happening on the ground right now with the pipelines and the natives trying to protect the bayous of America? And as non-native, non-indigenous people, if we do show up to help at something, what is the protocol so that we don't seem impositional or colonizing in any way?
Okay. The big thing is the Keystone Pipeline has been stopped by Biden. There's another pipeline up there that, well, there are quite a few pipelines that the activists are after. But the main one, of course, the main preoccupation at the moment is the DAPL pipeline. A certain redundancy there because it's the Dakota Access Pipeline.
Yeah.
I can give you my point of view about it. The DAPL pipeline, since I was at Standing Rock and involved in that right up until almost the end in February, and I was there the day that the Army Corps of Engineers came down with the ruling that they had to stop the pipeline and wait for an environmental impact study. That was in December of 2016, and we thought that we had won a major battle with that. At that time, Obama was a lame duck, and it was Obama's Army Corps of Engineers that came down with that ruling, and I think that he had something to do with that. And then in January, Trump is inaugurated, and one of the first things that he did was wipe that all away and say that the environmental impact statement was not required. He did that with an executive order, and then they proceeded to try to kick everybody off of the protest lands at Standing Rock, and they accomplished that on February 23rd.
Jesus, yeah.
In case you needed one more thing to be annoyed with Trump about.
Yeah, and the thing is, Trump had a personal interest in the pipeline and in that company. He owned shares of the company. I think he divested it after the election, but he still had that connection. And I wouldn't be surprised if his kids still had those investments,
Some loophole.
Yeah.
But so for the last 4 years, we've been kind of dealing with the fact that they had carte blanche to do whatever they want, and they've been pumping oil. Since Biden was elected, there have been a lot of high hopes that that's going to be reversed, because one of the first things that he did was he said no to the Keystone Pipeline, but he's been slow to react about the DAPL pipeline, and there are some court cases that are currently active. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe has been litigating heavily against the pipeline, and they think that the pipeline is operating illegally without the proper permits. And there was a hearing just a few days ago where the tribe was told by it's between the tribe and the Army Corps of Engineers, as I understand it, and it has to do with these environmental impact studies. And I think what the court said was that they were going to put it on hold again for another 30 days or something. The court's been kind of putting off there hasn't been a definitive ruling telling.
They're kicking the can.
Yeah, and it keeps going. I'm following it pretty closely because I actually worked for the Lakota People's Law Project, and they're one of the ones that are heavily involved in this litigation. The Standing Rock Sioux tribe is heading this up because that it was right there on their land, but the Lakota People's Law Project is also involved in that.
There's a Native American woman that is leading the Department of the Interior now. Is she working actively on this stuff too, or do you feel like she's making a difference, or is she just token?
That's Deb Haaland.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right, but she's Navajo, I think. Diné is what they call it.
Okay.
from, and there are very high hopes about that, because that's like, it's a major thing to have the head of the Department of Interior to be, number one, a woman, and number two, to be indigenous. The Department of Interior was the active arm of the federal government that put down the people. And she's already made a lot of positive moves, especially she's been working on the issue of the missing indigenous women. There's lots of missing women that have, and lately, and there's a lot of speculation about why that might be, and some of it has to do with what are called the man camps. The man camps are these camps that spring up around the pipeline construction, and Native women seem to go missing around them. That's one of the issues, and the larger mass media doesn't seem to be interested in all of these missing indigenous women.
Quick question: the man camps, are those made up of the employees who are working on the Keystone Pipeline?
Yeah, on any of these pipelines, particularly the DAPL one.
So these are basically
also
like
the shale oil people are like that too. They have these camps that are just like flash camps that'll just show up, and it's boom, boom, boom for like 2 years, and then everybody leaves. I've heard that there's a lot of sex trafficking all across that northern stretch. Of some of these girls, you know.
So I think that the Dakota Access Pipeline is going to heat up more. I predict that it's not going away for sure. The matriarch, the Lakota matriarch, who was very seminal in the protest, just passed away a couple of days ago. And
what's her name?
LaDonna Allred, I think is her name. She owned the property on the Cannonball River where the protest originally started, and she's a member of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe, I believe. And I've just noticed over the last couple of days the amount of grief that people have been expressing at her loss, because she was such a leader. She was one of the ones, you know, she opened up her own property and allowed people to come in and camp, and they established what was called the Sacred Stone Camp. There were various camps that were suburbs surrounding the big Standing Rock camp. The big Standing Rock camp was called Ocheti Sakowin, which means the 7 council fires. And that actually fulfilled a prophecy, by the way, because it was the first time that the 7 Lakota nations had come together in one camp since the Battle of the Little Bighorn.
Wow.
Ocheti Sakowin means the 7 council fires, and each one of the bands or tribes of the Lakotas, there are 7 of them. They had their own teepee, and they set them all up, in a big circle. And that's the council fires. The smaller surrounding camps, one of them was called the Rosebud Camp. That's one of the bands or tribes of the Lakotas. And then there was the Sacred Stone Camp that I was just talking about. They were across the river from the main camp. When the camps were overrun by the police in February, everybody escaped across the river, across the Cannonball River, back to safe land, which was where this Rosebud Camp was, and where the Sacred Stone Camp was. It's where this woman's property was.
Is that the river where the famous picture that shows all those women getting sprayed by those water cannons in the river when it's like in the middle of wintertime? I remember there's this one picture, it's so otherworldly and apocalyptic.
I don't know if that's the Cannonball River or the Missouri River. there was an island there called Turtle Island. It seems to me, and that's where some of that was, where the pepper spray incidents were. There were so many of those kinds of incidents.
Do you see a
But
time coming in the next year where they'll need outside help from non-native people to come and assist? And if so, what would be the proper protocol for doing that in a way that's respectful?
okay, I personally think that's probably coming,
Yeah.
and I would welcome it,
Hmm.
particularly if there's no movement by the court.
Mm.
And by the Biden administration. I was just reading something on the news about how the Biden administration is kind of flummoxed about how they want to attack that issue and whether they want to at all. It seems like they're kind of avoiding it so far, but the I and then they're all okay. If we wanted to go, originally the original Standing Rock protest, what happened was that the people, the indigenous Lakotas who were on site at the protest decided to invite the outside world. They put out a call for help, for allies to come and help them. So I would wait for that. I would wait for that call to be invited to come.
Okay. Where do they put the call out? Is there a place you can check in? Or we'll just hear about it?
What happened originally was Chief Arvo Looking Horse put out a call on social media.
Okay.
And when I read that, that's when I decided I had to go. It's a little bit more involved story than that, because I had some personal involvement. A friend of mine got arrested when I heard the story, and then I also, read Arvo Looking Horse asking for the allies to come and help. And when I heard that, of course, I had to go. But that's what I would wait for. And when you get there, you're on their land. You're a guest, and you should act that way. There is a tendency of white people to kind of take charge and think that they know all the answers and know how to do things. And one of the things that is a stark reality at the camp is that that's just not the way it's done there. We are there to help them, and they tell us what they would like us to do. And in my previous podcast interview with Edward, I talked a lot about
81
the details of my experience at the Standing Rock camp, and what a magical place it was. It was a prayer camp. There are different kinds of camps. There are hunting camps. There are war camps. This was the prayer camp, and it was established in a very ceremonial and solemn way. And so
there's a war camp I can connect with.
There are different kinds of camps. That's interesting to bring up.
Like a ceremony, sort of like a type of camp in the astral that sometimes is in the material plane, but probably hasn't been in a little while, if I'm guessing.
I'm thinking like Mars, Aries.
Something like that, probably.
So interestingly too, there are different kinds of pipes. There are war pipes, and then there are peace pipes, right?
Like the red and white, like the black and white pillars.
You would smoke the pipe for a different intention, right? A different kind of prayer.
Well, there's crack pipes, and there's
the question. The question now, the timely question is, what with everything else that's going on politically right now, are they going to continue to be peaceful? Is the idea that it's civil disobedience and peace and no weaponry, or does it get more violent than that?
It depends on how many veterans they can get to come join the cause.
Well, there are people that are advocating for more forceful response. I hear that. My own opinion is I don't think that is what would work. I think that really it's a battle of public opinion.
Yeah.
It's not a physical battle on a battlefield that's going to win this. You win it by convincing people that what you're saying is true and right. And if you start shooting cops and shooting police and shooting National Guard, you're going to lose that battle, I think.
That makes sense.
It would certainly be more painful.
I mean, looking back at history, just as a quick aside, I don't want to go down a tangent, but one thing that changed everybody's opinion about war was videotape. You know, war used to be glamorous, and you'd look forward to your child growing up and going off to war, you know, and then everybody saw the videotape, and nasty.
That is interesting how the war coming to the living rooms in Vietnam was one of the biggest nodal points, actually.
Or in
it was in everybody's living room.
The theaters
people
after
had never seen it for the first time, and it no longer looked glamorous, like you said, or
1945 when everybody saw the concentration camps. They aired it in movie theaters.
And speaking of in people's living rooms, in my last interview, Edward and I were talking about one of the incidents that took place at Standing Rock while I was there, and that was the forgiveness ceremony that took place.
The 7th Cavalry.
The 7th Cavalry representatives.
The present day 7th Cavalry.
Yeah, like I said, many veterans showed up at the camp, and I was one of them. And I happened to be at the Sacred Fire one night, and I heard that the tribe was going to do a ceremony the next day at the casino to thank the veterans for coming. And that word didn't really get out to most of the veterans. It was all word of mouth. And luckily I had heard about it. And so the next day I went up to the casino. There was a blizzard that was moving in. The blizzard socked us into the casino during the ceremony. And there were only about 300 veterans present. And what I thought it was going to be like the president of the Standing Rock Sioux tribe was going to thank us, something like that. But it turned out to be the spiritual leadership of the tribe, not the political leadership. And the spiritual leaders were like Leonard Crow Dog, who was the spiritual leader at the Wounded Knee occupation in '73.
Wow.
He's still alive. He's the patriarch right now. It was clear that everybody was deferring to him. The other one was Chief Arva Looking Horse, who I mentioned earlier. Arva Looking Horse is the keeper of the sacred white buffalo calf pipe. His brother Ivan. There were a handful of others, but those were the main ones. The spiritual leaders of the tribe were present and thanking us for coming. And then the representatives of the 7th Cavalry, who were veterans of the 7th Cavalry in the Army, stepped forward and sort of ceremoniously apologized to the Lakota people for warring on them for a couple hundred years.
Like representatives from the U.S. Army, right?
Veterans that had been in that
specific
in the 7th Cavalry.
Wow.
And so when they apologized to the tribe, I mean the entire room was just silent. You could have heard a pin drop. And then Leonard Crow Dog, who was the patriarch, the leader, obviously, he puts his hand on the head of the representative from the 7th Cavalry and says that he accepts the apology and he forgives them. So that's why it became called the forgiveness ceremony. the tribe forgave us as white people. I mean, most of the veterans who came were white. He forgave us for our hereditary trauma. You know, the guilt that we feel for what our ancestors did to their ancestors. And it was an extremely moving moment, and I happened to be there. Edward saw it, I think, at home, and he knew immediately what I was talking about.
Yeah, it was being live streamed.
But that is the kind of magic, that was Standing Rock was the most profound magical working I have ever seen. It was a sacred space. It was sanctified and consecrated, and it just seemed like there was just magic going on all the time that you were in that space. And anybody that's been in the space knows what I'm talking about, and it's hard to describe to people that weren't there.
You know, some of the young folks that used to help out at Occupy Ice Camp, we were camped downtown for like 5 months, and they came in with a lot of the same camping equipment that they had used at the DAPL, and they all had their own really transformative experience, you know, about synchronicities that happened, and they described it in a very similar way. Like this sort of field of energy was almost created there.
Yeah, synchronicities were constant. I mean, it was like if you had a need for something and you hadn't yet voiced it to anybody, somebody would just kind of spontaneously walk up to you and hand you the thing that you needed and just walked away. It was like that sort of thing was common.
Wow, that's a beautiful collective flow state. That's beautiful.
What we were kind of discussing is, you know, the DAPL situation is continuing. The Standing Rock protest is probably, in my opinion, going to reemerge somehow in the near future if the court cases continue to not act, because the tribe feels like the pipeline is operating illegally, and I would expect to see another kind of spiritual camp like that happen. Where the reason why I reached out to Edward and said I wanted to talk more about this is because I'm actually on the verge of going out to South Dakota right now, and my goal in going out there is to help my brothers and sisters on the Rosebud Reservation who are trying to create a community there. They're trying to build environmentally sustainable housing using organic materials, sort of like they use in the Southwest, adobe materials, to build dome-like structures and try to build out a community that people can actually live in. And because the housing out on the reservations is so scarce, I've been on the reservation the last 2 summers, and there just is no spare housing anywhere. And so many people are, you know, there are multiple families living in one house, and the government can't seem to take care of the problem. And the water protectors from Standing Rock that I know, we're still a community, we're still in touch with each other, and I heard this that some people were going to plan to do this summer, and so I signed on, and that's what I'm getting ready to go there for. We've been waiting for the weather to get warm enough, and of course it'll be a spiritual community because of the people that are involved in this project. They are my friends from the Rosebud camp. The Rosebud camp, of course, were the people that came from the Rosebud Reservation. and that's where this project is going to be, on the Rosebud Reservation. And a lot of these people do ceremony on the Rosebud Reservation every summer. They do Lakota ceremony, in particular the Sundance. So it's a spiritual community, and I'm at the age of 65. I'm not getting any younger, and I would love to be involved in like what in my youth was. I used to watch the older people, the older hippies. You know, they would build these communes, and they had high hopes for, you know, creating a new world. Well, we can still do it, and I think that, in my own opinion, ever since I've been to Standing Rock, I've felt that the Lakota ways are really the solution to our problems. And the Lakota ways could really heal the entire world. In fact, there are prophecies that say that that's going to happen, and the prophecies say that it's not just the Lakotas that will do it for us. It's that that all of the people of the different colors, all the different colored skins will come together as one, and race will no longer be an issue. And those are called the Rainbow Prophecies. It's not just a Lakota prophecy. I think, you know, there are a lot
have one like that, right?
Yeah, there are that the Rainbow Prophecies is sort of a kind of a mythological thing at this point. There's a lot of criticism that it's not real, and that it might be a New Age invention. I still think that the underlying sentiment for that is really there in the fundamental traditional Lakota ways. They don't believe in racism. They don't believe that you have to be a red man with a 100% pure blood red quantum to practice their ways. And there are various spiritual leaders that have said this, that have preached this over the years. So, you know, it's you know, I've done a lot of research about it. It's from Crazy Horse to Black Elk to Frank Fool's Crow to the current generation. They're the real medicine people believe that they're all about being simple, humble people, and being true to the earth, being caretakers of Mother Earth, and not, you know, there are certain factions that are you know, against, you know, they're angry at the white man, and they want to get back at the white man.
Yeah.
And I understand it. I understand that ancestral and generational trauma that's being expressed.
Yeah.
But the real spiritual work is understanding where that trauma is coming from, and then healing that trauma. And that's what this spirituality is really about. It's about finding out what that trauma is and healing it. And it works extremely well for that purpose. That's why it works so well with people who are in recovery.
Huh.
You know, oftentimes you'll see people that are in 12-step programs. You know, they'll be doing sweat lodge.
Okay. Wow. I know that with the current ecological collapse that's already starting kind of worldwide, living with radical simplicity as close to the earth as possible and growing as much of our own food as possible, that's going to become a necessity, and we will kind of necessity have to live like that, live in the old ways, which will force us into a more intimate connection with nature. Brother Dan, I was reading some Black Elk Speaks one time, and this word stood out to me. I don't know how to say it. It is Watiko, and it was very similar in the way he would use it to when Jesus said you cannot worship both God and mammon, and it's easier for a camel to get through the eye of a needle than the rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. He talked about this word Watiko or Watiko or whatever as being almost like this dark demonic cloud of avarice that takes over society. And Black Elk said that the white man had this spiritual disease.
Wait, you mean Wasichu?
Maybe that's what it was. Okay, how do you spell that? That's a really interesting concept.
It's commonly spelled Wasicu,
Okay.
but in the Lakota language, these words often end in the letter N, and that N is pronounced with a guttural sound, or a glottal sound. It's Wasichung.
Cool.
The Wasichu is the common term for white man by the Lakotas.
Okay.
and Wasichu means the common understanding of the word is that it means he who takes the fat, or the fat taker. For example, if you killed the buffalo and you're butchering the buffalo, the selfish one would take the best part. The best part is, like, I'm not sure what the best part is, but I think it might be, where the hump is. So the fat taker is the selfish one. And obviously the white man has been very
selfish, taking the best parts.
Selfish, yeah. They take the land. And they're devious, and they lie, and they cheat, and they promise that they make promises, they make treaties, and they break every single treaty.
If I recall correctly, though, it had an older meaning, right?
Yeah. I looked into the word more, and we haven't really talked much about the metaphysics of Lakota yet, but and the different kinds of spirits that there are. I did a lot of research.
That sounds interesting.
I did a lot of research about that, because I was a philosophy major, and I kind of wanted to understand the fundamentals of cosmology, before we get on to the details, right? So yeah. I wanted to start at the general and work to the specific. So I did some research on the word Wasichu and looked at some very old Lakota dictionaries, and the word originally means something very powerful and magical. It can mean a medicine bundle that a shaman has. That is a Wasichum. It can mean a spirit helper. It includes the word Sichon in it. Sichon is one of the 16 basic fundamental high-level spirits of the Lakota pantheon. Sichon is that essential spiritual element that is in a thing that makes it that thing. Like
the boson.
Like if you're given an eagle feather, you now say that you have eagle medicine. The eagle feather has that eagle spirit in it. That is the eagle Sichun. If you have a buffalo skull, that buffalo skull has the spirit of the buffalo in it, and that's the Sichun spirit. That's the Sichun. And so Wasichun has that magical spirit in the word. So it was a very powerful and magical thing originally. And I think when I can conjecture that when the white people first arrived on the scene, that they must have been, the Lakotas must have been very awestruck by their arrival, they had these magical weapons. They were dressed flamboyantly. They looked differently. They had golden hair and
Spirits.
But unfortunately, it was all style and no substance for them. But we could talk a little bit more about the pantheon if you want.
Yeah.
Yes, I would like to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. So there, you oftentimes hear that the Lakotas have something called Wakantanka, and Wakantanka is supposed to be their god. Like it's the equivalent to the Christian God. That's not the case. Wakantanka means the great mystery. They feel that these things are so complicated and inconceivable that they are sacred. They are sacred because they are that there's no way that we have the ability to understand it. And so that is Wakan. Wakan means sacred. Wakantanka means the big sacredness, the great sacredness, the great mystery. So Wakantanka is everything that is. It's like the unity. It's like where it's non-duality.
Okay.
And it's made up of all of the things that are dual, right? In a way, it's sort of like
Unified field.
It's sort of like the Ein Sof of the tree of life emerging, and from that one point up there at Kether, it comes out and starts to become dual with Chakma and Bina, right?
Yeah.
So there is an origin myth of the spirits. The first one that was there is Inyan. Inyan is the stone. It's the stone people. It's like the rock. It's like the earth that was there. The primordial earth is a big rock. And after that came Maha, which is the earth, because he wanted company, right? So he creates earth, and the earth surrounds the rock, and then you have
Just like
other
soil.
Yeah. And then you have water appear, and then you have the sun. The sun comes to illuminate everything. Let there be light, right? So there are now 4 spirits, and each of these 4 spirits have a consort, so to speak. And the sun's consort would be the moon. The one of the consorts is Wakion, which is the thunderbird. There is the Tate, which is the wind. I don't have all of them on the tip of my tongue right now, but so you have the primordial 4, and they have consorts, which are another set of 4, and then you have a third set of 4, and the third set of 4 includes the buffalo spirit, which is the life giver, life force. And you have the bear spirit. The bear spirit is the healing force, and you have the 4 winds, which the 4 winds are the 4 directions. They're the children of the wind. And then you have a 12th one, which is interestingly, that one's called Yumni. It's called the whirlwind. It's the 5th child of the wind. It's not a directional wind. It's the whirlwind. It's like the tornado. It's like the dust devil. And interestingly enough, I found someplace that said that that's the spirit of love.
Huh.
And then you
Like
have,
romantic love?
yeah. And then
That
you
makes
have,
sense.
so now you have 12 spirits so far. That leaves 4 more, because there's a total of 16 that make up Wakantanka. Wakantanka is unity, and it's made up of all of these sub-spirits that are all duals of each other. The last four are the 4 parts of the soul. So for the Lakotas, we have 4 spirits that make up our soul. And one of them is called the Nia. The Nia is the animating element. It's the breath of life. It's what gives us life. And these 4 parts of the soul are given to us when we're born by the high spirit that's called Taku Wakan Shkanshkan, which is, he's commonly called the Great Spirit. He's commonly called Tankashala, which means grandfather. He's the sky. He's grandfather sky. And when you're born, grandfather sky reaches up into the sky and he picks a star. And that star is given to you at birth. And that's what these 4 parts of the soul are. They're given to you by grandfather sky when you're born. The first one is like the breath of life. The second one is called the Nagila, the Nagi, which is it's like the ghost. It's like your ghost. It's your character. The third one is called the Nagila. It's that one's a little hard to describe. But the fourth one, the very last one, the 16th spirit of Wakantanka, is what I was describing earlier. It's called the Sichun. It's that essence of things that make them what they are. It's like the eagle,
like the Platonic
spirit.
Ideal or something.
Yeah, it might be called Platonic form. It's you have it when you're born. When oftentimes Sichun is in like hair. The Lakotas won't cut their hair unless they're grieving, right? If they're grieving a death, they might cut their hair. Interestingly enough, when somebody in the family dies, one of the things they did, one of the sacred ceremonies, is they cut off some of the hair, and they would keep that hair for a whole year, as if the person was there in the teepee with them, and they would feed the hair. It's called the keeping of the soul ceremony, and you're doing that because the spirit of that person is in the hair. And one of the this is also, I guess you could say, there's a lot of lore about taking scalps and what that was all about. Well, you're capturing the spirit of your enemy. See, and after you have his scalp, you've got him, and he's your slave, and you take him. You can take him with you to when you die, actually, and it's on the other side that he can be released. He can sort of be redeemed of whatever it was that made him an enemy in the first place. But the spirit, the Sichun spirit is in holy relics. It's like if you have a bone, a deer bone, or a deer hoof, the spirit of the deer is in that. So that's why you see, all of these fetishes. It's the spirit of those animals are alive in the fetishes, and and shamans traded these things. That's what your power is. Your power is in the power is the Sichun energy that's given to you directly by spirit during vision quests or during ceremonies. And so you build up a medicine bundle that has your power in it. And as time goes on, you know, the shaman may pass away, and his medicine bundle will be passed on to somebody else. So his power can go to somebody else. It can be traded. So that's sort of fun. That's fundamental Lakota metaphysics.
I wonder if anybody still has black elks.
Black Elk's what? His pipe?
Oh, his the things that he
Medicine bundle?
that were his medicine bundle or his hair.
Yeah, they do. And Crazy Horse especially. There are keepers of Crazy Horse's bundle. Crazy Horse was an owl man, from what I understand, and he had a lot of owl medicine.
We recently watched this this movie in Hindi with subtitles called Stree, about this demon woman, and in order to defeat her, she would come in the night and kill people, of course, or kidnap them, and you had to cut off her braid. Like, you couldn't stab her, you couldn't shoot her or anything. You had to cut her hair. It's interesting.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the sort of universals.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of them. You know, very fundamentally, when you talk about ancestor worship, you talk about these kinds of spirits, and these are the things that shamans work with because they understand it. You know, they're comfortable with.
That seems to be kind of like an unconscious or sometimes conscious. One of the reasons hippies have long hair, you know, is because they're kind of like tied into that. I don't know if they know they're tied into that, but it's like intuitive.
Father Yod said that explicitly in some of his recordings, that that's people should grow their hair and their beards long because it pulls in energy from the sun, and it has something to do with, he saw like antenna, kind of spiritual antenna.
Some people even say there's nerve endings, but that's kind of horse, you know. Pucky.
There is an urban myth out there that's circulating. I've actually posted it on Facebook myself.
What's that?
And it has to do with a story that supposedly the Army took Native American scouts and put them out in the field. But of course, what the Army does is, during the basic training, they cut off all their hair. Well, these scouts weren't any good when they went out in the field, and what they did is they did a little experiment where they changed their practice, and they allowed the scouts to grow their hair out, and the scouts that had their hair long were much more effective out in the field. This is sort of an urban myth. I have one person that swears that they know the scientists that have dealt with this personally, but I'm not totally sure of that. But but the idea is that, you know, if you have longer hair, it's like a more of a sensory apparatus. It's like it allows you to pick up it's like a radar detector or something. It allows you to detect energy in the field or whatever.
Interesting. Well, is there anything you want to mention before we wrap up the interview?
I did briefly talk about the fact that I'm going on this pilgrimage to South Dakota to try to help with this community.
Yeah, you haven't really gone into it much.
Yeah, how do we stay in contact? Because I want to follow the chapters of this journey, and maybe at some point I would love to meet a Lakota shaman and talk.
Well, that's hard to do. I do have a couple of fundraisers out there where I'm trying to raise money for gas so that I can get out there. There's one on there's one on GoFundMe, and there's also a Facebook fundraiser that's currently active right now.
If somebody has their phone in their hand right now, how do they get to one of these fundraisers to help you out?
There we go.
I guess they could come to my Facebook page, and it's under my name, Daniel Garber. It's facebook.com/wizard.garber, I think, is what the original URL is. But there are quite a few Daniel Garbers out there. One of them is a very, very successful and famous philosopher at the University of Chicago.
Mhm.
And another one is I don't know if you're familiar, but there is a famous artist named Daniel Garber of the Hudson School, I think it was.
I did notice this episode on YouTube is more popular than a lot of the other episodes. I wonder if there's a few people going, "Oh, I like that professor or that artist."
Yeah, find me on Facebook, and I'm very open to sharing with the world the adventure as it unfolds. I'm kind of stymied at the moment because gas prices are so high, and it's so expensive to go where I'm going with I have a big 4x4 truck that's pulling this 31-foot travel trailer. And I expect that the travel trailer is going to become a construction trailer on the site. It's going to be like the construction management trailer.
Oh,
maybe.
rad.
But I do
it's like
want
$8 a gallon, or is that down in California?
No, it's $3. So
Oh,
it's
okay.
it's over $3, but
still, that's a long distance.
That's what I'm trying to.
If people can get through to the website, there's, attached to this episode. So if you you can Google Esoterinerd 105 or Esoterinerd Daniel Garber. There's more than one episode he's been on those. So yeah, Esoterinerd 105, and I'll post a link to the GoFundMe as well.
Yeah, for sure. We want to get that going.
Yeah, the weather has finally turned, and that's been the big thing. It's like in South Dakota, you don't want to be out there when it's below zero or when it's below freezing.
Right.
Once it warms up, then the ground will warm up and we'll be able to start doing this work. So we've sort of been holding off for the weather, and now the weather seems to be turning. So I'm getting ready to go. I'm getting antsy.
Oh man,
I want to get out there. I want to help the people. I want to build these experimental dome structures out of adobe. It's called earth bag materials. And I want to do ceremony with my brothers and sisters.
Beautiful.
Nice.
If somebody wanted to come and help, do you guys allow outsiders to come and like help work on this stuff and camp and just kind of check out
at this point
things are happening?
At this point, I'm not sure that it's totally open to strangers. It might evolve to that at some point if a call went out. At this point, we have to know who you are. We have to understand where you're coming from. There is a website that describes what this thing is that we're trying to do.
Could you send me that link and I'll link to that as well?
Yeah, what is that website?
I'll tell you what it is here. It's called unshelteredearth.com.
Can you spell that?
Unsheltered Earth.
Unsheltered. Okay.
.com.
Cool.
Nice.
It sounds like this year is off to a much lovelier path than last year.
So far, so good.
Well, my own spiritual experience has been progressive. It's kind of what I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about where I was at during Standing Rock and coming out of that Standing Rock experience, and then what happened, and then what happened to me afterwards over the last 4 years leading to this where I am now. And every year it's just more and more growth, more progressive, more insights, just more magical. And I'm loving it, actually. And like I said, I'm 65 years old and I'm not getting any younger. So I want to get out there and I want to like do what I can while I still can.
Mm. Hear, hear.
That's a beautiful vision there. We definitely need to get that GoFundMe going, and
Oh, hell yeah.
and be able to spiritually vicariously experience some of this goodness that's happening there.
So you'll be off grid a little bit when you go?
Oh, it's off grid?
Mhm.
Well, I currently am able to have a hotspot if I have access to if I get a signal on my phone.
Okay.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm doing right now, actually.
Oh, nice.
So
Me too, actually.
as long as AT&T gives me a signal, I can be online.
Okay.
We have bigger issues like, well, how are you going to charge your phone? How are you going to charge your computer?
Right. Yeah.
We have generators, but the generators, of course, run on gasoline. We don't have any solar panels that I know of. If somebody wants to contribute that technology to this project, that's certainly welcome.
Okay.
Very nice. All right. Well, we'll get the word out, and maybe while you're out there, if there's an update you want to give us, then if you have electricity and all that. Otherwise, when you return in September, then we can do Daniel Garber 5 and hear all about how it went.
I'm not sure I'm coming back.
Oh, okay. That's great.
Wow.
That's
You
what
might
happened
go
to me,
there
and I
stay.
didn't come back.
The idea is to build these dome structures and then ride them through the winter to see how it goes.
Oh, good.
Oh, wow. That sounds so cool.
And when I was at Standing Rock, one of the things that I did there was I delivered these what we called tarpies. Tarpies were a white man's version of a teepee made from materials that you could buy at the hardware store.
All right.
And it's a plastic tarp wrapped around a 2x4 frame, right? Basically, with a wood stove inside it. And one of the things the Lakotas named them tarpies. It was sort of a deprecating term because they didn't think that they were going to stand up to the winds, nor did they think that they would be warm enough. In fact, not a single one that we put up almost 50.
Wow.
And not a single one blew over that I know of. And they were very warm inside in like minus 40 degree temperatures. I know because I weathered a blizzard in one of those, and it was around minus 40 wind chill when I was inside that thing.
How many days were you in there during that blizzard?
Well, that's the blizzard. I think that's the blizzard that followed after the forgiveness ceremony. So I was in there a couple of days, but then we decided that it was time for us to get out because it was getting pretty drastic. And I had a really hard time. We had a diesel truck, and I had a hard time getting that diesel truck started in that kind of temperature. I didn't have any experience in how to do it, but some people helped me to get it started, and we actually got out of there and drove home without any kind of heat in the truck. Actually, there was no working heat in the truck. So actually, by the time I got back, that was in December. By the time we drove all the way back from Standing Rock to Seattle, by the time I got to Seattle, we left with what was commonly called the camp cough. It was a viral lung infection. Oh. And it hit me pretty hard by the time I got back, and I ended up having to go to the hospital. But that was just one of the details about what happened at Standing Rock.
Wow. So you guys were really putting your bodies on the line and suffering for the cause with the people, man.
Yeah, I talked about this a
beautiful.
lot in that earlier interview.
I'm gonna go back and give that a listen. I'm not sure I've heard the entire
Yeah.
thing. I'm gonna, yeah.
81. Everybody should have a listen if they haven't heard it yet. That was the one where we talked about. Oh yeah. Sorry, what?
Go ahead.
Oh, that episode 81. You went in depth into. I mean, we don't need to retell the story. We'll just tell people to go listen to it about the 77 stones, the river stones.
Yeah.
That was beautiful. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So that go find out about that on episode 81.
but I haven't shared. I've had all kinds of things like that happen in the last 4 years. I mentioned the aphorism Mitako Iasin, which means we are all related, or all my relations. One of the things that they say when they begin to talk about something is, or when they're asking to speak, what they'll say is Matakiyapi. And Matakiyapi basically is saying, my relations, it's saying, hello, my relations. I'm addressing my relatives.
Interesting. Avete fratres et sorores.
I got my tea and I'm ready for stories.
Nice.
Okay. So where we left that original interview, I was, I think this is the way it ended. I was in a snow-covered landscape in South Dakota talking to a spiritual elder, and I offered him tobacco and told him that I asked him for help on my path. The original interview, I think, talks about that in detail, but I had felt I had been on the what the Lakotas call the Red Road for many years, since 1991 in particular, when I did my first ceremony, and I smoked my first pipe in 1991, and I think that was about at that stage, I think it was about like 25 years earlier. So I'd been on the road for 25 years, but I had never felt like I was ready to take on the responsibilities of really walking the path in a 100% of the time, a full-time occupation, in other words. And so I asked him for help, and then we drove back to Seattle, and my Standing Rock experience ended. What happened after that is a lot of incidents and experiences occurred, just building on each other. The biggest one, I guess, was I had waited 26 years to be carried by the pipe, the sacred pipe, and that happened for me in the months that followed Standing Rock. I was actually convinced by my men's society that I was ready to pick that up, and a Lakota teacher helped me to make my pipe, and I picked it up. I'm going to preface this by saying I'm a little bit uncomfortable about talking about some of these details, because they're personal, spiritual, and we don't want to sound like we're bragging about this stuff,
right?
Or that
we can respect that, sure.
Yeah, just skip any part that feels uncomfortable.
And it's not coming from a place of ego, but I had waited for 20 years or something like that to go to my first Sundance. I was waiting for the opportunity. The Sundance is not something that you find in the yellow pages. You can't look it up. You can't find, nowadays, I guess they're, on the internet, you can't Google a Sundance. If you Google the Sundance, I would be very doubtful whether it's real. My Sundance experience came to me when a brother of mine asked me to support him at his own dance. And so in June, following Standing Rock, that would have been 2017, I found myself in Montana at my very first Sundance, which was an amazing experience, just unbelievable. I was given the teachings about the pipe in the Oglala way, and in a ceremony, in a sweat lodge ceremony, actually. And the Sundance goes on for 4 days. On the final day of the Sundance, I was supporting my brother. I wasn't dancing in that dance, but I got the call to dance the next year. So I did offer tobacco, and I pledged to dance the following year, which would have been 2018. So I spent a whole year preparing for the dance in 2018. And what happened in the summer of 2018, coming up in June, I think it was May, I got word that the Sundance had been canceled, and it had been canceled because there'd been a death in the Sundance family. Now, that particular dance, they had pledged to put on a dance for 4 years, and that particular dance would have been their 4th dance. And because the dance was canceled in that way, they no longer had a commitment to do a Sundance anymore. So I actually lost my opportunity to do a Sundance after waiting all of that time. After waiting 20 years to get the opportunity, and then spending a whole year to prepare for it, and then it with like a month left to go, it's canceled. And so I was sort of devastated, along with the other people that were going to dance in that dance. And I didn't really know what to do. I had been to a second Sundance after the very first one that I went to. It was actually on the Rosebud Reservation, and on that reservation, and with those people, I actually presented tobacco and asked to be put up on the hill. And what that means is the Lakota word for that is Hamblesha. It's called a vision quest, where you're crying for a vision. And back in the old days, this was an initiation ceremony for young men, and they would be put up on the hill at the age of 12 or 13 in puberty. And the vision quest sort of set the stage or the theme of their whole life, because the vision and the animals that came to them to be their spirit helpers would sort of define who they were. In our day, I mean, I didn't have the opportunity to do that when I was 12 or 13, so I'm sort of playing catch up. And the older medicine people used to do a vision quest every year. Frank Foolscrow did one every year, from what I understand. He lived to be 99. And
just to interject, I apologize for breaking the flow, but I just wanted to throw in, while we're on the subject, Isabel Allende wrote a book called Zorro, where she mythologizes the story of the life of Zorro. And in that story, his grandmother is Native American, and in his vision quest, he sees a fox, which in Spanish is Zorro. Anyway, go on.
I never actually read the actual book that was based on. That's fascinating.
Yeah. She made it in post. I mean, it's like a reimagining of something that already existed. Yeah. Okay, sorry, go on.
Well, I didn't know that either. So thanks for sharing that.
Oh yeah.
So they put me up on the hill, and I came back down off the hill. And this was right before the dance started. And again, I was supporting that dance. I had pledged to dance in this other dance. And I went through the entire dance supporting my brothers and sisters as they were dancing. And you know, as I said, I was a brand new carrier of the pipe, and actually what we say is that the pipe carries us. We don't carry the pipe.
Mm.
And the you know, it's a very it's a very solemn thing to talk about the pipe. It's a very sacred thing, and it's a heavy responsibility. It's not something to be taken lightly. It's the very what happened is my pipe remained unsmoked throughout the entire dance through some strange circumstances.
Mhm.
And what happens is that all of the prayers of the Sundance go into the pipe, and when the pipe is smoked, all of the prayers are released to spirit. It's called on the breath of Wope. Wope is the divine feminine. She's one of those 16 high walking tonkas.
Wow.
My pipe sat unsmoked throughout the entire dance, and I was a brand new wasichu. I was very uncomfortable about that. I didn't know what I was supposed to do without offending anybody. And the dance ended, and the day after the dance ended, the Sundance chief invited me to help work on his car. And so I was up there at his house with my Sawzall plugged into the electricity and cutting the exhaust pipe out of his truck, and we were bonding over that.
Nice.
And I said, you know, I have this problem. And he said, what's your problem? And I said, well, I have this pipe that needs to be smoked. You know, I didn't smoke it, and you know, I don't want to offend anybody. And what do you think I should do? And he said, well, we must smoke your pipe.
Nice.
So they did a sweat lodge ceremony that night, which would have been the day after the Sundance, and everybody that was there, all these aged Sundancers and the chief and the medicine man, the holy man, they shared my pipe in this sweat lodge ceremony, and my pipe was blessed by them. And it was remarkable too, because you know, I had only had the pipe for a couple of months at that point, and the pipe that I had loaded lasted. It stayed lit through the entire ceremony. In other words, there might have been 20-25 people in that lodge. Every single person smoked it, and it didn't go out all the way to the very end.
That's cool.
And so my pipe was accepted and blessed by them, you know, and as a white person, that's quite an honor. I was very self-conscious about that. You know, do I have the right? Do I have the right to do this, you know, as a white man? But I was accepted by them. And so I came out of that lodge, and there was a thunderstorm brewing, and the thunderbirds were rolling in on the property, and I had to get out of there, because if I didn't get my truck out and leave that night before the rain hit, I would have been stuck there was a lot of mud there, a lot of dust and mud. And so I got out, and I drove out, and then it was the next year that I was looking forward to that first dance that I would dance in, and then the dance was canceled. And then I didn't really know what to do after that. I spent a whole year trying to find another dance or a solution. I kind of shopped around, asked people that I knew in the community out here in Seattle area, and we do sweat lodges at least once a month here. And
Wait,
and
are there joint ceremonies in between the Lakota and the tribes out near Seattle?
Yeah, there's shared ceremonies. There are different
okay.
different styles of sweat lodges depending on who's running them.
Mhm.
Some one of them that I go to is a very strict Lakota sweat lodge, but another one that I do is is more eclectic, I guess you could say. It's on the Tulalip Reservation, and so it would be a Salish one. But it's surprising that even the Salish sweat lodges incorporate a lot of the Lakota songs and Lakota methods. Not all of them, and there are Blackfoot. The Blackfoot sweat lodges are slightly different from Lakota ones. There's also Seminole lodges. It took me a long time to like hook up with that kind of community, but after a while, I got to know people, and I was doing ceremony at least once a month, sometimes twice a month, and ideally, I would do it every week if I could. And in fact, I wouldn't mind doing it every day.
I feel like I heard that there was a Native American church somewhere east of Laguna or something that people would go to, and they were having a weekly thing out there. I don't know the formal name of it. People would just say they're going to the Native American church, and that's
Native American church is a term for a specific kind of ceremony, and it really has to do with peyote ceremony.
All right, yeah, well, that would make sense.
There's lots of different sweat lodges out there because there's lots of different people pouring. You need to develop some kind of discernment about how you feel about the person that's pouring, whether they're legit, whether they're appropriating the ceremony. There's a lot of things that go into how you feel about whether you're comfortable with the ceremony that you're doing and whether it's a good fit for you.
Right.
If somebody's charging a fee for a sweat lodge, that's a big no-no. You don't go to that one, because no one would charge money for a sweat lodge ceremony.
I like that. You can't serve both God and mammon.
And
yeah,
if you see that, I mean, that is a sign of a typical New Age culturally appropriated ceremony.
That's when something actually is cultural appropriation, when it's being sold. Like when I don't know. I think people are a little too sensitive. They use the word a little too often. Like, I mean, okay, I practice yoga and I live in India. Is this cultural appropriation? I mean, I'm genuinely wholeheartedly embracing the culture. I'm not trying to make money off it. I mean, I have a website. Maybe I am, I don't know, like, because I have those hangups too, as a fellow white man who loves cultures other than my own.
Yeah, that's a really good public discourse to have, how to have that kind of deep spiritual interaction, not just
respectfully, sincerely, and when you can't not do it, when your heart is drawn to something to where you can't turn away from it, that's totally different from cultural appropriation, unless you then start selling it.
Yeah, there's the classic story of the guy in Sedona, Arizona, who had a sweat lodge covered with plastic tarps, and I think he killed 4 people in the lodge.
Heard about that, yeah.
And I think people were paying. I heard $10,000. It was for a workshop, and I think the sweat lodge was part of the workshop. It's not like it was $10,000 for one ceremony. But I, obviously a lot of money was changing hands, and that incident is used as the perfect example of what not to do.
Right.
And how things can really go wrong if you don't know what you're doing, if it's not coming from a good place. So I've got to get back to the story here. I was looking for I was looking for a Sundance, and I still, first of all, there was the question of whether I still had an obligation, because I had made a pledge to dance in that dance the next year. Well, the dance wasn't going to happen. Is my pledge now void and mute or moot. And I consulted various elders, and the consensus seemed to be that no, you've made a pledge to spirit to dance. So I still had this outstanding pledge, and so
Tell me what you mean by pledge, because it sounds like pledge is the really like that's like some type of deep spiritual contract or something. What does that entail? The pledge there.
Well, you offer tobacco to what's called the intercessor. He's the medicine man at the Sundance, and he is the intercessor, means the one that interprets for the spirit, right? He's the go-between, and really what he did is he took me out to the tree at the Sundance and talked to spirit for me and asked and explained my situation and said that he wants to dance. Is that okay? And I was accepted to dance the next year. And it's a contract between me and spirit, and it's a very solemn and serious thing. So I felt I felt an obligation. I have to like do this, and I didn't have a clue how to go about doing it, and that's part of the journey. It's part of my own journey anyway, and the lessons that I had to learn. The one of the big lessons that I have learned along the way is that as a white man, I can't do things the way I was taught and told and trained in school, in college, by the military, in various jobs, about how we do project management and we plan things. That's not what this stuff is about. The way this stuff works is you have to surrender yourself to spirit. You have to let go, and when you let go that need to control things and to plan things, then it will happen in the natural, organic way that it's meant to, and the way that spirit wants it to happen. That's the lesson, one of the main lessons that I have learned along the way. So out of nowhere, I'm doing sweat lodge ceremonies here, and I get a contact from somebody that I don't know. I've never met this person. They work for the Oglala Sioux tribe, actually, on Pine Ridge Reservation, and they wanted me to come out there and help them. They wanted to put me to work to help the people. This came out of nowhere. I didn't really know what to do about it, and I prayed about it for a couple of months in the lodge. It's like, what should I do? And finally, I just realized that, this is the answer to that prayer. And I need to go. It's an opportunity for me to go to Pine Ridge and be with the people and serve the people. So I ended up packing up my truck and just driving out there to Pine Ridge. This would have been 2019. I spent about 3 or 4 months on Pine Ridge, helping the people and helping the tribe. What happened was there was a big flood there, and the flood was a result of these heavy hailstorms that occurred. And the hailstorms damaged housing, broke windows, damaged roofs. All these houses were damaged, and there was all kinds of flood damage. And that was the main. And we got a FEMA declaration from President Trump. And so once it was declared an emergency, then there was all of this FEMA help. And I was involved in all of this. So I was working with the president of the tribe. I have a picture of myself sitting in the office of the president of the Oglala Sioux tribe, just with a look of amazement on my face, because it was like, I just had this, I had this overwhelming just awe of like, how did I find myself here? You know, so I did ceremony I did sweat lodge ceremony with various people while I was on the reservation. I always had my ear out for the possibility of a dance. You're right there on the reservation. There are lots of dances coming in the Sundance, and I admit it was on my agenda. I wanted to find that good fit that I was looking for, and it didn't happen right away. It happened after a few false starts. I did ceremony with several different medicine people, and then out of nowhere, again in a totally unexpected way, I was invited to do a sweat lodge with a group, a new community that I didn't know, and I did that sweat lodge, and it was all native, all Lakotas, except for the two of us that were guests. And as soon as we're in the ceremony and I'm doing the appropriate things, they know that you seem to know what you're doing. And after that ceremony, I was sort of accepted, and then I was told that I was, and then they did ceremony every week. And the next week came along, and I was told that I have to go out there alone if I'm going to go. And because my friend that had invited me, he couldn't go, so I had to go out all by myself. And I think that, looking back on it, that was a test of my own character and my own will. They wanted to see whether I would actually go out there and do it by myself. And in order to get there, I had to drive, I think it's about 10 miles out into the countryside there on Pine Ridge, and go to this community of total strangers. And I'm the only white person, and I hear this whispering around me, it's like, who is this guy? And then I did ceremony with them again for the second time. And after that second time, I think I was more accepted than I was before. And I found out that they were actually holding a Sundance in 10 days. And they asked me to help set up for the Sundance. And of course, I dropped everything that I was doing, and I said, absolutely. And I helped 100% wholeheartedly to help them set up their Sundance. And after setting up the Sundance with them, it's like every day we would do a sweat lodge that night. And I just became more and more accepted, I think, by them, until finally I got an invitation to actually dance in the dance. And so I did that.
My imagination's filling in the blanks here, because I know there's probably a lot you can't say about the structure or the content of these meetings and dances, but when you talk about using consecrated objects, what comes to mind is the work in Kabbalah, where sometimes you'll use a charged implement or icon, and you use that in workings, sometimes drawing upon angelic names related to certain elements, of earth, air, fire, and water. And it's basically an emanationist view. And when you were describing like the 16 names, it almost made me think of like the Shem Hem Paresh. Is there sort of an emanationist theology that's part of the rituals and the way it's structured, or what does one do as far as what you can say and what you're allowed to say?
Well, the short answer is yes. There are so many
described the non-dual within the dualistic partners that exist within a non-dual unity. That actually, you can apply that to Golden Dawn egregore as well. And I don't even know if either one is emanationist per se. because neither one is really referencing a god. I mean, obviously in Golden Dawn they call him by name, but I don't know. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I mean there are a lot of similarities in their ritual. A lot of similarities with various kinds of Western Hermetic ritual I've done. The lesser banishing ritual of the pentagram is very similar to a pipe ceremony. You're creating a sacred space. You're banishing it out. You're calling in the directions. It's very similar.
Wow. It's like the four archangels.
Yeah, the four archangels are equivalent to the four directions. The four winds, in other words. And these kinds of things are very astounding to me. Okay, it's very wakon. It's very sacred.
Yeah.
So I danced in the dance and had my prayers answered. I left Pine Ridge in 2019, and in their ways, in Lakota ways, you generally dance for 4 years. So I didn't actually pledge to dance for 4 years. I had pledged to dance 1 year, but it's more. I've already fulfilled my pledge, but from now on it's voluntary, and I fully intend to dance a full 4 years and maybe more.
What
Depends
are
on
you allowed to say about the dance itself? Like, by dancing, is this like an actual aerobic movement, or like
well,
like a pageant of some sort, or?
It's a big circle about the size of Stonehenge. In the center of that circle is a tree. That's a cottonwood tree. It's called the Tree of Life. Interestingly enough, and I have a teacher. One of my teachers. He was my Blackfoot teacher. He also was a Bota initiate. And
building of the Addendum here in Highland Park.
Yeah, and he and I had long talks about this, and it was his conviction that the Tree of Life in the center of the Sundance is equivalent to the Tree of Life in Kabbalah. There are different worlds on that tree. And in person, I might be able to share more things. In a public way like this, I'm
I honor that.
I'm like right on the edge of feeling comfortable.
We can seal that one off for right now. I mean, the sign of silence and whatnot.
Yeah, but the next year would have been 2020, and I wasn't really sure how I was going to end up out there, but I did end up out there. I ended up out there for a month with the same community. I helped again set up the dance. The dance is usually 12 days long. There's 4 days of setup, and the actual dance, the public dance, goes on for 4 days, and then there's 4 days afterwards. So it's a full 12 days, a full 12-day commitment. So I was there setting up, and I also danced 4 days. And then I was there for 4 days afterwards, helping take it all down. And then, remarkably enough, after that dance, I was invited to fire tend another dance, a second dance. I wasn't. That doesn't involve dancing in that dance. It involves, taking care of the fire. The fire has to be kept lit for the entire term of the dance. That's the responsibility of the fire tender. Naha has her own school now.
Yeah, I've seen on the social media. Is she still based out of that same place?
No, she has her own school.
Oh,
It's
okay.
downtown. It's downtown LA, I think.
What's it called?
22 Teachings.
Oh, right. Yeah, she had that going, I think before I left California, or she was doing it as a workshop at the temple.
Yes.
That place.
Yeah, she made the leap. She's on her own.
Nice. That's good.
Okay, I'm back now.
Okay. So we last thing you said, the fire needs to be tended.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to keep that fire going, and there are some interesting side stories. I guess I'm not going to go into some of these side stories. I could do it personally, but I don't think in public I should. But it became my personal responsibility to fire tend this entire Sundance, and that's a big responsibility. The funny observation about my experience out there as a white man is that I was also 64 years old. The funny thing is, once I was accepted by them, it's sort of I'm expected to act like an elder. I was told that they're expecting you to tell them what to do because you're the elder, and that really surprised me. As a white man and an outsider like that, and one of the things that I really had to keep in mind is that life expectancy on the res is very low, and as a 64-year-old person, that already makes me very old. That's
Wow.
The men's life expectancy doesn't even reach 50. So I am an elder, and
What do you think could help with that?
what could help with that?
Yeah.
A hospital or two.
Well, I don't. That's just throwing things at an underlying social problem. The biggest problem, I think, is that they have been they've had their culture destroyed by us.
Yeah.
And they need to rediscover their culture and their own self-esteem. They are doing that, but I think that is really a big problem. If people don't have self-esteem, they kind of let their life fall apart, and they don't become and they are not always making healthy choices. So but the return to this kind of spirituality is exactly what they need,
right?
Because it is a discipline and there is an esteem to it.
Yeah.
So I was asked to fire tend the dance, and fire tending means you keep that fire going all the time, even through the night. And I was the only one. Actually, there were supposed to be two of us. We were supposed to be sharing this responsibility, and the other person failed to live up to that obligation, and his whole story, which I won't go into, is a perfect story of how karma is in operation at the Sundance. There were some personality flaws, some mistakes made, and one thing or another, he learned a lot of very serious lessons. But what that meant was that I ended up having to fire tend the dance all by myself, and that got
Simon
to be
of
pretty.
Cyrene.
That got to be pretty exhausting. And one of the things, you're not only just keeping the fire going, but you're actually involved very seriously in the actual Sundance, because because you're providing what's called the smudge for the dance, which is this incense that purifies the dance space. It keeps the dance space protected. It
like
keeps
the
the dance.
Dachas.
It keeps it sacred. Keeps
Yeah.
that space. There are actually 4 gates to the circle. There's energy flowing in through the 4 gates, and you have to keep those gates secure so that only good spirits are coming in there and the bad spirits don't come in. So constantly working on that, and let's just say the fire tender is very much a part of the dance, even though he's not out there dancing. And so that was a great honor for me, and I completed we completed that dance, the second dance of that summer. That was last summer. That would have been my 5th dance, I guess.
So 4 days without sleeping?
Well, fitfully. There's a trick to keeping the fire going all night, and that has to do with putting a very large log on there. I've been to 5 dances, 2 of which I danced in. So the next dance that I will go to will be my 6th dance, and it will be the 3rd dance that I dance in.
Nice.
And that will be this summer on Pine Ridge. I will have to leave this other project that's on Rosebud so that I can go do that. The obligation usually is for 4 years, so this is my 3rd year. And after the 4th year, then I will consider. I mean, it's usually considered that your obligation is complete and you've kind of completed the main initiation. But you know, one of the lessons that I've learned in these ways so far is that these ways are not like Boy Scouts. It's not where you work your way through the merit badges and then you get your next rank. It's not like that at all. You have a personal relationship with spirit, and there's a personal thing going on between you and spirit, and spirit can call you to do things that other people don't get called to do, and vice versa. You know, just because I dance in four dances in 4 years doesn't mean that I'm entitled to anything. And I might, in fact, you know, be called to dance in another 4 after that. It's between me and spirit, and
Right.
and as each year goes by, my relationship to that great mystery just becomes deeper and more profound. And I'm also planning to do another vision quest in May. So in addition to being out there on Rosebud building these sustainable homes, I'm also going to be involved in some various other spiritual endeavors as well.
Are you allowed to talk about what the vision quest is like, and if you're taking the entheogenics?
Well, back in the old days, it was done for a pubescent male. And what they used to do is they would do a sweat lodge ceremony. They would take him to a hill or a mountain, and they would set up a sweat lodge, and they would do a sweat lodge ceremony with him and purify him first. And then they would take him up on the hill, which is in some obscure place, some barren place. They would mark off a space that was his that he couldn't leave for 4 days.
Wow.
And he's not supposed to drink anything, and he's not supposed to eat anything for 4 days. And all he can take with him is his pipe. And in the original version, he went up naked, carrying only a buffalo robe to cover him. In modern times, I didn't go up there naked, but the first one I was wearing yoga shorts, and that's all. And I had a Pendleton blanket, and I just stayed up there for the period of time of the quest. And the Lakota word for it is Homblesha, and that includes in it the word which means to cry. So what you're really doing is you're crying for a vision. You're asking your relatives to pity you and to be compassionate and to give you a vision that will give meaning to your life, or an answer to a question that you have, or an answer to a prayer that you have. And the extent to which you're successful in that has a lot to do with your success in life after that, and your self-confidence, your personal power. Typically what happens is spirit speaks to you through an animal. An animal will present itself and start talking to you, and gives you a message. It may even give you some medicine. It may give you some sichun, like I described earlier. And those relics that are given to you go into your own personal medicine bundle, and it becomes part of your own kit. So that's essentially, it's also a preparation for the Sundance itself. It's a 4-day fast, no water, which is what happens in the Sundance, except in the Sundance you're actually up there dancing while all, in the sun. And the Lakota word for the Sundance is staring into the sun. You're asking for the spirits. You're trying to put yourself into a state where the spirits can come to you and talk to you. You're trying to be present with them, and that they would be present with you. That's really essentially what it's about. And
it
the
sounds like being baptized in fire.
And the farther you get into it, the longer you get into it, the more you develop better skills at doing it. And of course you're learning the lessons as you go.
Very nice.
And I'm willing to share more things in detail one-on-one with people, but I have to be circumspect about talking in a public way like this.
Of course. Well, we'll do this again
either
halfway through or when you come back. If you come back, we'll do a part 5.
Can't wait to hear some stories.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good.
Thank you for coming
Be well.
On the podcast, brother.
Now, what we say is toksha. Toksha means till we see each other again. They don't say goodbye.
Toksha.
Toksha.
Thank you, Daniel Garber, for being our guest tonight on the Esoterinerd podcast. Special thanks to Robert Strong, PhD of Gonzo Theology, for being my co-host. Special thanks to Susumu Ueda and his father and the other monks at Jofuku-in Temple on Mount Koyasan for the music you're hearing right now, which is the same track that you heard in the beginning of the episode And a different track by the same artist was used during the recital of the Lotus Sutra, the Namu Myōhō Renge Kyō segment in this episode and in the previous episode. Special thanks to Camille and Kennerly for whichever harp introduction and outro I decide to use for the interview itself. And most importantly, special thanks to you, the Esoterinerd, listening to this podcast. Good night. Welcome, and thank you again for sitting all the way through to the end. If you did indeed sit all the way through to the end, and you haven't yet, I would beseech thee to subscribe. Is it here? Subscribe? And I won't go so far as to ask you to click the notification bell. If you could like the video, it'd be very nice. I won't go so far as to ask you to comment, but all of those things help. But if you don't mind, just taking a moment, like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. If you want to help me out, I don't have a Patreon page. I'm not trying to make money off this thing, but I think it'd be nice to trick the algorithm into recommending my channel and this content that people discuss on my channel to more people.